That one looks like mine. I was like, oh my God, I have one of those too. Yeah. Good evening. So let's open chant books up. We chant a lot here. Like, let me tell you why. So my teachers always said that yoga has to be practiced with a higher intention. It can't be just because your hamstrings are tight or you got tight shoulders. You go to do any fitness class for that, right? You have to have a higher intention. Higher intention has to be given to us through the Shastras, right? Shastras, a lot of times people get scared of these texts because they think it's like Abrahamic tradition, like biblical, like, oh my God, this is like somebody else's Bible. It's not. Shastra literally means manual. It's academic. This is academic study. Academic studies called Jnana Yoga, the yoga of the thinking mind. You have to study. You can't just do down dogs, because it don't get you anywhere finally. So there always has to be this intellectual study. So any yoga shastra is just a manual. It's not a holy book. It's a very different thing. It's academic, right? So we're going to chant from the Yoga Sutras. And Yoga Sutras, when you read it, the whole entire book, have you ever studied Yoga Sutras at all? It's like reading a cookbook. It is like reading, do you bake? Do you like to bake? Okay, it's like reading how to bake a cake. If you do this, this, and this, and this, and this, at the end you get a chocolate cake. That is exactly how Pantanjali is doing. He's saying, if you do this, this, and this, and this, and he gives you some tips along the way, like, if you put 2 tablespoons of cornstarch in your flour, your cake will be fluffier. He gives you tips like that. But he's basically a manual of how to get to that point of yoga. But then you have to you understand what yoga is to him, right? Because he's the one who's writing the cookbook. It's just like, if you go to Betty Crocker Best Recipes and she makes a chocolate cake, Betty Crocker, because she was a real person, that chocolate cake is going to be very, very different than if you go to Julia Childs. If you go to Julia Childs, that's going to be a very, very different chocolate cake. And Julia Childs is going to be a lot more complicated than Miss Betty Crocker. Betty Crocker is kind of, writing a cookbook for the masses. Julia is writing for those that are ambitious enough to want to be called a French pastry chef, So it's a different set of directions. Patanjali is the same way. He's writing for a very small group of people that want this thing that he calls yoga, which is self-realization. Realizing the true self instead of the self that you think you are. That's a very small group of people. It's not a big group of people. It's a minority. So we're going to chant tonight the 8 limbs of yoga. We're going to chant the yamas and the niyamas. And this is like an 8-step path to him. So page 43. Pick up your chant book. It won't bite you. It's not a devil book, I promise. Page 43, 2.29, top 3. So 3 ohms. We'll do this as call and response. Yama, yama, niyama, niyama, asana, asana, pranayama, pranayama, pratyahara, pratyahara, dharana, dharana, dhyana, dhyana, samadhaya, samadhaya, ashtangani, ashtangani. All right. So putting it together, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhaya, ashtangani. Try it. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhaya, ashtangani. Good. Now look at 2.30. These are the yamas, the first limb. Ahimsa, ahimsa, satya, satya, asteya, asteya, brahmacharya, brahmacharya, aparigraha, aparigraha, yamaha, yamaha, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, parigraha, yamaha, ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, parigraha, yamaha. Good. Now look at 2.32. This is the niyamas. Saucha, saucha, santosha, santosha, tapa, tapa, svadhyaya, svadhyaya, ishvara, ishvara, pranidandani, pranidandani, niyamaha, niyamaha. Saucha, santosha, tapa, svadhyaya, ishvara, pranidandani, niyamaha. Saucha, santosha, tapa, svadhyaya, ishvara, pranidandani, niyamaha. So, like I said, this is like a laundry list, right? This is like him telling you everything you need to get ready to start mixing your cake. You know, get your flour, get your baking soda, get your salt, get your sugar, get your, you know, if you're vegan, eggs. You're like, you know, if you're going to use chocolate, use chocolate. If you're going to use vanilla, vanilla, whatever you're going to put on it. But he's just giving you a laundry list. That's all this is. It's a simple laundry list. Yama is restrictions. So it's how we act externally within the world. Niyamas are observations. Niyamas are what we observe within ourselves. Those are the first two limbs or steps to yoga. How you act externally and how you act internally. Then he says asana, right? We practiced asana before. Asana is not important to him. He says it 3 times in a 4-chapter book. And when he says asana, he's actually talking about the seat of meditation, because this is before Hatha Yoga Pradipika by about 3,000 years. So nobody's doing the kind of things that we do at this point. Nobody's doing headstands. Nobody's doing down dogs or splits or hand balances. That's way later. That is only, as what we can tell, that is only about 1,500 years old. So it's closer to us now than actually Pantanjali when he wrote this. Pantanjali is closer to, like, you know, the early Egyptian civilizations 3,000 years ago. So, so a seat for him is meditation. Connect, sit down, be still. Then the next thing is more important. Breathe, pranayama. Breathe. Learn to breathe. Because if you can control your breath, you can control your mind. When your breath is erratic, your mind's erratic. That's important to him. He talks a lot about learning to breathe. Then he says, pratyahara, draw the senses inward. Leave the material world, the phenomenal world behind you, and start to investigate what's internal. Find out what's inside of you. Now, that's hard for a lot of people because a lot of us don't like what's inside. So we run away from it. We run toward the material world. But like, he's saying, no, you got to confront that. Confront it, sit with it. And then he says, dharana, focus and draw your mind in, rein it in. Because your mind's like a bunch of wild horses. It's just going all over the place. And he's like, so you're breathing and you're drawing everything in. You're going to put reins on those horses. And then the horses are going to be able to do what you want them to do, and they're going to get you to where you want to go. Then he says dhyana, which is meditation. My teacher, Yoga Sri Sudarshan Kanan, reminds us all the time that most of us are first just learning to focus. That at this point, very few of us are meditating, because for Pantanjali, meditation is when you know yourself so well that you can merge with that self in union with it. And what is the self? The self is that divine essence within you. Some people will call it soul. Some people will call it a spark of God. Some people will call it light. I don't care what you call it. It's all the same thing. He wants you to merge with that and know that so well that when you come back out into the world, that you can present that instead of the ego personality. That you can present that divine, radiant light within, right? It doesn't sound like a bad deal to me. Samadhi is the final step of the 8-limb system, which is that union. So he calls yoga samadhi. They're the same thing. It's that bonding together, that there's no separation anymore. So he's a dualist, right? That's what he is. He's a dualist. Dualist philosophy is where the person believes that you need to work to come into contact with that divine essence within, that you feel separated. It feels like there's this huge gap. And through the sadhana, you close the gap and become one with it, right? And then once there's that union and that oneness, there is no more separation. There is no more dualism. It's non-dualism. You and it are the same thing. But I wanted to just add in what are these yamas and niyamas that he brings up in the beginning, because those are the things that are the most important, because that's our starting point. That's our first time we reach up to the branch of the tree and hold onto a branch with the yamas. Ahimsa, non-violence, non-violation, non-harming. I don't care which you call it. It's all the same thing. I personally like non-violation because it's a little more subtle than non-harming or non-violence. We pick up the term non-violence from Gandhi. That's who we originally see him putting that phrase onto it, because he meets Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King is active in non-violent protest, and Gandhi uses it and he says ahimsa is non-violence. So that's a fairly new term to put to ahimsa. Ah means away, and himsa means harmful. So ahimsa would be away from harming, literally. And it would include a lot of different things. Because I hear again, he's asking you to do a more subtle. You could think about it as your outward actions, your the way that you are conducting yourself in the world that others can see. But he's going to really go into a place where he says, no, but it's even your thoughts. That your thoughts could be himsic. Your thoughts could be toxic. And if I'm putting on a false face, and yet I'm thinking these horrible, nasty things about the other person or the situation, then it's still himsic, even though I've got a false face on, right? So ahimsa becomes the foundation of the yoga practice for him entirely. It's like the cement that holds the foundation of everything up. Satya, truthfulness. Now, Satya, according to the Shastras, Satya is truthfulness that has to be mutually beneficial for you and me. It can't be one-sided truthfulness. It has to work for us both. So truth could be harmful if it's only working for me, right? But if truth is mutually beneficial for both of us, we grow, right? Asteya, non-stealing. Now that may sound like, don't take your neighbor's bank accounts or something like that, or their credit card. But it could be like, don't steal their hopes, don't steal their dreams, don't steal the things that give them like a spark of life too. It could be more subtle than that, right? Brahmacharya, this is the one that all modern people have a problem with. Continence, restricting sexual energy. Like that one's a hard one it was a hard one for me when I first started practicing yoga. I was like, what is he talking about? I'm liberated. I'm a gay man, I'm liberated. But it's taken me a long time to understand what he's saying. When he says brahmacharya, he's asking you to restrict a kind of energy that is lustful. He's not asking you to not be in a loving relationship. He's asking you to kind of start to rein in that kind of desire that is fleeting, those hot romance kind of desires, because they're going to end up being himsic. Very few times in your life have they ever worked out where it's like you and that person who the first time you got with them, it was so hot, ever lasted more than 30 seconds. It burned out like gasoline. It was like, and it's gone. So he knows. And he's saying, control your desires, control your passions, put a little damper on some of that. Aparigraha, stop grasping or gripping or hanging on to things. Let go of things. Let things flow through you, right? He says, these are the 5 restrictions that I want you to practice externally. And if you think about them, nobody would disagree with any of them. They all sound pretty good. Then he says, now there's these things, when you go internally, I want you to practice internally. So saucha, but they're going to relate back to like what he said above. Saucha, cleanliness. But then doesn't that somehow relate to brahmacharya and a kind of satya, a truthfulness? Because like cleanliness and truthfulness, cleanliness in my passions or my desires. Santosha, contentment. I can let go. It's going to go back to aparigraha. Contentment in my asteya. Because if I'm stealing stuff, I'm not content with what I have. So he's asking you now to think, why are you breaking yamas? Well, you're breaking them because you're not observing niyamas. Tapas, self-discipline, a burning desire. Tapas can mean heat, which means that I have a burning desire to do this thing. So it's self-discipline. It's regulating your own ability to do the sadhana. And then svadhyaya, self-study. Here again, he's going inward, so he doesn't want you to study the ego personality. He wants you to start to understand your true nature, the divine spark, that light within. And then Ishvara Pranidandini. Now he's very liberal here. I love how he writes Ishvara Pranidandini, because Ishvara really translates literally into Lord. And Pranidandini means devotion. So devotion or dedication to the Lord. He doesn't tell you who. He leaves it very abstract because he knows that there's a lot of different religious sects around him. And so but then, when you look at the word, the Lord, think of how you can use the Lord of the manor, the Lord of the house, the Lord of my senses. right? Who is ruling my senses, or who's ruling the internal? So the Lord becomes very broad and very liberal in its understanding of what you have to have devotion to. And so he's leaving it up to you. He's not dogmatic. There are other shastras that get more dogmatic, but Mr. Pantanjali is not dogmatic. And then that idea that once you practice those things, you are going to understand that you, the self, and the Lord are the same thing, whatever that is to you. You know, so I always say that yoga is multi. It's the first, what do they call it? Multi-religious organization. Like you can be anything you want to. Unitarian. It's the first Unitarian church, really. It's like nobody knows that. And those are the five observations you're going to practice internally. Now, when we talk about teaching yoga, I can teach you yamas, niyamas, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, and dharana. But as soon as we get to dhyana, meditation, and samadhi, I can't teach you anymore. You're on your own. Because I can explain these things to you. I can explain yamas, I can explain niyamas, I can just guide you in a seat. I can teach you how to breathe, some techniques. I can give you something, I can explain to you how to come inward, and then I can tell you what to focus on, give you some options. But I can't get you to meditate, right? Then you're on your own. That's the hard part, because every time we do meditation, we always come back out of it and we have a little talk and everybody says, oh, my mind was all over the place, right? Because that's your job, right? That's you keeping focus. Oh, I was thinking about what I was going to have for dinner. Okay, well, that's your job. So we're going to practice a little pranayama. And the pranayama is just going to lead us in. Now, when I teach meditation, for those of you, like for new people, I do a silent meditation. I don't talk anymore. I've done all my talking. I talk a lot. But when it comes time to be quiet, I be quiet. And so I leave you alone to sit with the self. We're going to practice a very simple pranayama. It's going to be a 6-count inhale, followed by a 12-count exhale. So the exhales are twice as long. So you got to slow them down a little bit, and maybe even use a little bit of that ujjayi pranayama, where you kind of do that restriction in the back of the throat so that you slow down the breath and you don't exhale it all out. And you want that inhale and that exhale to last the full 8 or 6 and 12, right? 6 and 12. That's what I said, right? So set up nice and tall, close the eyes, and internally bring the gaze kind of upward and inward toward what we call the third eye, right? And that upward gaze just helps you with upward energy internally. And inhale deeply, fill up your lungs, feel how expansive you are, and feel how the air feels at the tip of the nose as you inhale. Then exhale everything out all the way to the bottom, and feel what the air feels like at the tip of the nose, and still feel expansive even at the end of the exhale. Then slowly start to inhale. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now exhale slower. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Inhale 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now continue that rhythmic breathing on your own. Maybe even start by counting the breaths, setting the rhythm up internally on your own. And then start to draw the senses inward, letting my voice be the last thing to leave you. And focus the mind. To help you focus, I'm going to give you a mantra. As you inhale, silently chant to yourself, so. And as you exhale, silently chant to yourself, hum. Inhale, so, on that 6 count. And hum on that 12 count. So means I, and hum means am. Inhaling I, exhaling am, on your own. Silently tell yourself, I'm not this body. This body is outside of me. Silently tell yourself, I'm not this mind. This mind is outside of me. Silently tell yourself, you're not these thoughts. These thoughts are outside of you. Silently tell yourself, you're not these feelings. These feelings are outside of you. And tell yourself you are Swayambhakash, the light within, an enlightened being. Bring the hands together, rub the hands together, building heat within the hands. And bring the hands over the eyes and allow the heat from the hands to be absorbed into the eyes. And bring the hands onto the forehead, top of the head, back of the head, the nape of the neck. And then let the hands float down to the center of the chest and bring the hands together. And bow the head slightly, sealing the sadhana of dhyana. And then gently open the eyes. And you can move around if you need to move around. And welcome back. So that idea of like getting to know the self and it can only be done through meditation, right? He says that. You know, some of you were in class today and we talked about like the kleshas earlier tonight. And he even says here, he says that the only way to eliminate those kleshas is through dhyana, through meditation. Why? Because you get to know the self. And so then when you get to know the self, you get rid of the misidentification, you get rid of the hatred, you get rid of the fear of death, you get rid of the idea of that you always want to be pleasured, you know, you get rid of the ego personality, and you let that Swayambhakashit shine through. The light within shines through. And that's more powerful than the ego personality that we've developed ever since we were children. That's more powerful. And for him, that's the whole goal of this, you know. How is your meditation? Yeah, finally you just kind of get into the rhythm and you don't have to count it. But it's nice to do the like longer exhale, because usually what happens is in your normal breathing, your inhales are dominant and your exhales are passive. And so by just reversing that, you spend more time with the oxygen in the body. So the theory is that having the oxygen in the body a little longer, the bloodstream gets more oxygen, and then therefore it opens up pathways in the brain that are closed. That's the theory. Now, we'd have to talk to a neurologist to actually find out if that is the case, you know, because there is some of this that is, these are theories. Then people weren't medical scientists back there, but you know, medical science is now just beginning to probe the concepts of pranayama and meditation. Just now, they're starting to look at like what goes on in the brain when somebody is breathing deeply and sitting still and concentrating for long periods of time. And they do see changes. They're not really sure, and they're not sure if they can kind of clinically say this is what's happening, because the same thing doesn't seem to happen in everybody. Like, when they study people like Tibetan monks who do nothing but this is their job, there is something very different that's happening than if they, do the same study with people like us who kind of come in and sit for an hour and a half and then go back out there into the world. It's a little different. But just think of that as like finally just setting that rhythm, like you're singing, and that's just the loop that's playing in your head. And then you'll notice when the mind starts to go off on its daydream, and then you can pull yourself back. And and then it'll go away. You'll go away, and they'll come back. What about you?
Well, I was trying to examine I was also like falling asleep and in the middle. But like then I noticed that I'm not thinking any
Thoughts. Right.
Then like I realized that I'm going to sleep, I was falling asleep, and then I went back to 6 hours and
Yeah.
I didn't go over really just like
Yeah.
quiet.
Yeah. My teacher, Yoga Sri Darshan Kanan, he says that when you think you're falling asleep, you're not actually falling asleep. There is a brief second for the person who's just starting this that they are experiencing pure meditation, and they pull themselves away from it. Because it feels like you're going to sleep. Because the mind becomes totally still, the breath slows down, and there is just this moment that the body feels light. And that what he says is that the ego gets scared. Like, oh my God, this is happening. And then you pull yourself out of it. You jerk yourself out of it. But he says, think about like when you fall asleep on a plane. Like, because that's a situation where you're falling asleep and how you kind of fall over and you kind of stay there. And he's like, that's why you like if you fall asleep, you fall asleep. But you're starting to just touch that moment of like where the mind becomes calm enough that everything's kind of coming together. And then you know what you're looking for. Now I know what I'm looking for. Right? What about you?
When I was born, I was given a different name. Or in Israel, I was given a certain name, but I find out way later, and my name that I've always used, so it's always very unique, but in France, it's quite common.
Right.
There's nothing special about it. But coming here, it's very interesting. Like, I became used to people finding it like very original.
Right.
And kind of classy. And
Yes.
like it has like a tone to it. It's like French, not at all like that.
Because everybody's Veronique.
Yeah. Money and family doesn't have any money, and then here people hear that name and expect certain type.
Yes.
And have a certain expectation also because I got education and everything. So now people see me through that name.
Through the lens.
But it doesn't quite feel like me, like my image where
Right.
So it's like I was thinking of how I identify and how different I am from the child to the adult and the adult moving to a foreign country where that's
to France and then to move in here and then yes. And so that's what I was saying tonight. Like when we deal with the concept of the phenomenal world, or that idea of Maya and avidya, ignorance, or misidentification, or misidentifying, or that misknowing, those two things are working like two mirrors to each other. They're projecting back and forth onto each other. So it's interesting, like in one place, they changed your name so that you could get out of the country for whatever political reason or whatever that was. We don't have to go into that. But then you go to France and you become Veronique, but it's a common name in France. But then in America, it's very like there's something very like, we expect something else out of Veronique, and we don't even know who Veronique is. But we hear the name Veronique and like we're projecting onto Veronique, and Veronique has a choice to either say, well, I'm not that, or I play along with the game and project out what you want to see. That's the ego personality, right? And part of the idea of the exploration of the month is to ask, like, what would happen? Like, how would you react if all of a sudden you were nameless? That you just had no name? What would you identify with? Which Pantanjali is saying that's Ishvara, because Ishvara really doesn't have a name, right? Ishvara has many forms, but there is no real true form. It's an abstraction. It's light. It's pure essence. It's consciousness, right? So it doesn't have a gender, it doesn't have a race, it doesn't have an ethnicity, it doesn't have all those things that we are attaching value to because of culture. And culture is something that is created by humans. It does not exist. Bears do not have culture, right? Birds do not have culture. They have mating rituals, but you can't call that a culture, a cultural identity. And does a bird know that it's a bird? Because a bird is like, there's consciousness in the bird. The bird knows it's there, but does the bird know it will die? And does the bird ever ask the question, like, what happens when I'm going to die? Only humans do that. We're the only ones capable of doing that. So we have an opportunity to think about what is beyond just this form and make peace with it. And that idea of a parigraha, don't grasp, don't grip, don't hang on. He's saying that's also will go, like, as you become more subtle and you start to understand what he's saying when the time comes, let go of this form. Don't be afraid to let go of this. Don't hang on to it and grip, because we know people who get to that stage of their life where it's time to go and they're very terrified. They're frightened to death. And they're very angry that the body has failed them, right? Either because of old age. I had a friend who passed this 3 months ago, some of you know, and he was very angry because he had gotten old. He was a very, kind of fabulous New Yorker disco doll back in the day, right? And then he's 73 and he's angry that he's old. He's looking for everything he can do to be young again. And he dies of a massive heart attack. And he, I'd known him for 40 years, and I kept trying to say, you should come to meditation. You should come to yoga. I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. I'm not interested in that. Okay. What about you? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, that's the beginning of meditation, that moment when the mind becomes calm. I don't think it's empty. Like, I don't know. I mean, because the Buddha says, the Buddhists say that it's emptiness, it's shunya. But then what does emptiness mean? Because emptiness is an abstraction. Again, like when we're talking about abstractions, because the Buddhists don't believe in God, so there's consciousness, and the point of meditation is to find this expression of shunya, of emptiness, where it's just pure consciousness. And so, but like if I asked you to tell me what emptiness is, the first thing you see is the box that is containing emptiness. Therefore, it's not empty, because you see the container for the emptiness. Or you see it all white. Is it all white? Or I see it all black. Oh, is it all black? Or is that the projection of what I understand it to be as a human being experiencing the phenomenal world? And then because I know when I look into the box and the box is empty, I think the box is empty. So therefore, I'm projecting onto what emptiness is. I have no idea what emptiness is on a cosmic level. Now, when you say that, when you can say, I don't know what emptiness is, then, whoa, like you just opened up all kinds of doors to find out like what meditation is. Because that moment of just feeling calm and no chatter is that first step to finding meditation. What about you? Or did I ask you? Yes. No. Yes. Okay. No. I'm getting confused. I got so many people in here tonight.
I think maybe the temperature here and everybody like on the verge of sleeping. It's like so comfortable or something. I was doing that too. Except that I guess it's not sleeping. It's just like forgetfulness. Like all of a sudden you remember like, oh shoot, I wanted to ask a question about Satya.
Right.
I remember that shit. But like, oh, I have to remember to do that. And then
Right.
that's when you realize you haven't been thinking for like the past however long.
Right.
But then I remember that I wanted to ask about the what did you mean by the truth has to be good for both people, and how do you make it good?
Mutually beneficial for both of us. So if you look at the word satya, so sat, if you remember, we chanted tonight, Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya, right? Lead me from changing reality to unchanging reality. Sat would be unchanging truth. It would be sad. In that older version, it was sad, right? But it's sat later on. It becomes, there's replaced, the D is replaced with a T. And sat would be the truth of Ishvara, because the divine doesn't change. The divine never changes. So sat, it says sat. The Shastras say the sat has to exist in the past, the present, and the future all at the same time. And then that's mutually beneficial for the both of us. And then the coming together of us talking about this becomes the Sat song, the seekers of truth, the gathering of people seeking truth. Not a community, because community could change.
So seeking that truth, not any truth about
The truth.
not like any truth.
Objective truth over subjective truth. So you're like, telling, your argument about the color pink, or like if you really love the new Taylor Swift album, is always going to be subjective. So Patanjali is saying that truth has nothing to do with this, what we're talking about yoga. You can love Taylor Swift or not love Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift has nothing to do with it unless she wants to achieve self-realization. And then she's part of the Sat song, and she's no longer Taylor Swift. She is no longer Taylor Swift at that point. That's hard. That may be hard for Miss Swift. I don't know. Because is Miss Swift going to be ready to hear Austin say, you're not who you think you are? Because we're projecting on Miss Swift who we think she is. And she's projecting back out to us what she wants us to see, based upon her ego personality of the character that she's created as Taylor Swift. It's Maya, an illusion or a measurement or a controlled amount. You see? And it's that, so that sat would be, it would be mutually beneficial for you and I. Then I know myself and you know yourself. And then because we know ourselves, we also then know the collective self. Self that's beyond my little bit of light and your little bit of light. We know the absolute light. What about you?
Even though I don't practice yoga, I meditate 10 minutes a day. I know that's not any. But when I drop in, I see lots of color.
Right.
And I see blues and greens, and they swirl all around.
Right.
And then the color goes in tight. Because I'm focusing on the eye and I'm breathing through my eye. But then the color will come in tight, and it becomes like a spinning ball.
Right.
And then I see like a hole, and I feel like a shoot down to my stomach.
Right.
I know that sounds bizarre. But then I can see, not all the time, but it's almost like ticker tape going by of movies. And these are visions of all the people that I love and that I surround myself.
Right. So no, it's not weird. My teacher. So I'll give you two experiences. Where my Sanskrit teacher, who taught me Sanskrit, who she studied with Sri Brahmananda Saraswati, who was very, very well known Vedantic teacher. I remember the first time I was in meditation with her, somebody raised their hand and they said, I saw this and I saw that. And she said, well, you're not meditating. That was how she put it. I believed that for a long time. Then I met my guru, which was 10 years later, Sri Yoga Sri Sudarshan Kanan, and I had an experience with him where I saw things, and like he did not ask me what I saw. He looked at me and he said, I know what you saw. And he said, it's real. And I did not ask you in the group what you saw because it was too personal. And he said, but it was real because he went on, he said, whatever you see is real. But then I think there's levels of that reality, right? So there are meanings to colors. Colors have meanings. The consciousness is looking for meaning and purpose. The idea of the ticker tape of like who you're seeing, who you love, that is what I would question. Could go deeper into that, because is it conditional love or is it unconditional love?
It's usually my kids.
It's conditional love. That's conditional.
And then once I'm a widow, and once my husband dropped in.
Yeah.
Because I went down a little chute, I don't know why I go into my own stomach, but he dropped in.
Right.
We were having a conversation.
Right. And so these are conditional, considered conditional love. Right? You love them because they're your kids. You love them because he's your ex-husband or your past husband. And so there was a mutual exchange and offering that relationship brings. But then can you get to the point where the ticker taper is any being you've ever met? That you can love them with no conditions. That you see the light in every one of those beings, human being and other beings. That you can see the divine light and you love them unconditionally. And that is a love without attachment. When that you see that, then there is no more otherness. Because like I just said, Sat, I see myself, she sees herself. Because we see ourselves, we see the universal self. Unconditional love is being able to see Sat in all beings and that you love them equally. Doesn't mean you have to like them, doesn't mean you have to agree with them. You love them. You love them. And there's no condition to that love. But family, lovers, partners, intimate friends, those are conditional loves. We're expecting something back. And because we love you, I expect something in return, especially with parents and children. Yeah. Yeah. All parents love their children, but that is not an unconditional love. How many parents do you know who have tell those kids to get out of their house because they've had some fight or something? The kid doesn't do what mom and dad want. That's a conditional love. I love you as long as you do this. Or the kids don't want to speak to parents anymore because the parents the parents do something kids don't like. I love you as long as you do what I want. But the unconditional love is when you love all beings, and it's a different kind of love. It's a love that I don't know if it's very, I don't think it's very easy to get to that point, to have complete unconditional love. But that's what I say. That's what I say what your goal would want to be. It's going to be hard to get there. Right? But colors do mean things. And I mean, you could color analysis all day, but you also know that colors mean different things in different cultures. So what a color means to us is not the same thing it means to somebody from Asia or Africa or, So that's also kind of like an interesting kind of place to start to investigate. If blue means calm to you, what does it mean to somebody in Asia? What does green mean? I always like the green because heart chakra is green, right? Green in Western cultures means sick or envy, green with envy. There's something toxic about the color green. However, in Asian cultures, green represents new, spring, growth, wealth, abundance. So it is here again, the mind projects onto color green what it wants to see. So then you have to investigate all those different cultures and kind of go, what could this all mean? And then go back and meditate on why am I seeing blue and green? What does it mean? And does it have anything to do with what I think it means? Then that gets interesting. Then you're getting interesting. That's an attachment, which is fine. But here again, that's what it means to the ego personality. And could that color, that idea of what blue and green means to you, be different in 10 years? Is it changing reality or is it unchanging reality? Is it subjective or objective? Right? And this is just kind of a game you're playing with yourself to understand how your mind works. That's what you're going to get out of it. How does my mind work? Oh, I like that color blue. Oh, I don't like that color blue. Well, why do I not like that color blue if I like the other color blue? Because they're both blue. Well, I don't like that kind of, that yellow blue color. That kind of like 50s aquamarine color. You see, that's what we do. And then, like, can you get to where it's like you can get to the point where you kind of go, oh, I don't have to like that color aquamarine blue, but I understand how it could be useful within a certain context. It's not what I would pick for my house, but I understand why I would pick it if I were redoing a 1950s kitchen, even though, yeah, or like something like that, yeah. So it's the idea of learning subjective objective. My Sanskrit teachers who she lived actually with Sri Brahmananda Saraswati up at his ashram in Monroe, New York. He used to call the Yoga Sutras self-analysis. And he was a brain surgeon. He was a very intelligent man. He was a brain surgeon who came to New York to work in the New York hospitals from India. That he was that good of a brain surgeon. And then he taught Advaita Vedanta. But he said when he wrote his version, his interpretation of the Yoga Sutras, he called it self-analysis. And he talked about that if you use this, you should not have to go to therapy. He said, if you follow what Mr. Pantanjali says, he said, you will understand how your own mind works better than any therapist could ever tell you how it works. So there's a little bit of self-analysis within the context of yoga before you get to that state of pure consciousness or pure union with the object of Ishvara, whatever that is. It's a work in progress. I mean, I should also add that, by the time the British got to India, to colonize India in the late 17th and 18th century, this text had been forgotten about. Nobody was practicing. The only people who knew about it was, highly academic people in universities and things like that. It was too hard. They were practicing other things that were easier, like Hatha Yoga or like, Bhakti Yoga, where it was like emotional, like love for whatever you want to call God, but this was too hard. So people had forgotten about it, and the British translated it. And, it was Iyengar, the famous yoga teacher, who then turned all of the West onto it when he wrote his interpretation of it. And that's how it became like a popular text to read. And because Iyengar loved it. But you have to remember, nobody was practicing this when the British came. It was forgotten about because it was hard. It was a work in progress, and it was too long of a process. But I think that for us in the West now, especially because we do understand modern psychology, it's more fascinating because he doesn't read like he's 3,000 years old. He reads very contemporary. Like if you read what he says, he reads very contemporary. His is a white and red book, kind of with a swoosh of red on a white surface. I think his is incredibly difficult to read. I think Sri Brahmananda's, it was the first one I had to read for teacher training, and I did not know what he was talking about. It took me years of studying before I understood, because his knowledge of the brain then was layered on top of that his medical knowledge layered on top of the Yoga Sutras. It was just way too intellectually over my head at the time. I was like, what is he talking about? And the one that I like, and I wouldn't do it reading it, is there's two that I like. If you're like somebody, like if you're a student and you want to study it, maybe start with the Iyengar one. And there's a lot of different covers because that one's been in print so many times. What I like about Iyengar's is he gives the Sanskrit, he gives the English interpretation, and then he gives a dictionary breakdown of each one of the words. So it's incredibly useful. Then he, gives the definition. Then he has a little commentary about it. It's very easy to get through. If you're a yoga teacher, I would say get the Edward Bryan one. And that one may be that kind of burgundy one that has like a... There's one by Satchidananda that like everybody gets. But I like Edwin Bryan. He's only over in Rutgers. He teaches at Rutgers. He's brilliant. The man is brilliant. But I would, if I got his, I would listen to him doing it in Audible and follow along, because he's a little heady too. Yeah, he teaches at Rutgers. He'll answer your email if you have a question. You email him directly. I know, because I've done it before. I'm like, Mr. Bryan, you do not know me. I'm not one of your students, but I have a question. Yeah, he wrote back. Like, and he was like, and it was a short answer, but he answered. 3 ohms. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Bringing the hands together, bowing the head slightly, giving thanks and praise for the teachers and teachings of yoga from the past, the present, and still teachers and teachings yet to be revealed. Om Bolo Sadguru Bhagavan Ki Jai. Namaste. Thank you all. And also, I should also just throw in there, remember, this is only one way of teaching meditation. There are many ways to approach this. This is just his way. This is just Mr. Pantanjali's way. It's not the only way. So if some...
There was a word in that ecstasy.
Ecstasy, yes. So ecstasy is not like dropping ecstasy. It's like a total blissful state of pure happiness. Right, but samadhi is ecstasy. So it's pure happiness, pure joy. You're like, you've totally come into that idea of samadhi, ecstasy, joy, happiness, pure bliss. It would be the last thing for him. This thing called, so if you look up samadhi, you're going to, in a Sanskrit dictionary, it's going to say ecstasy. But for him, samadhi is the same thing as yoga. He doesn't use the word yoga. He says samadhi, union, happiness, joy, ecstasy, bliss.
I mean, if that's like repetitive, because ecstasy is one of the 8 limbs on the path to achieve yoga.
It is the achievement of yoga. are the 8 limbs. This are the 8 limbs. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
It is the highest limb.
Okay.
Right. So it's the